The Wachau is an Austrian valley with a picturesque landscape formed by the Danube River. It is one of the most prominent tourist destinations of Lower Austria, located midway between the towns of Melk and Krems, that also attracts connoisseurs and epicureans for its high-quality wines. It is 40 kilometres in length and was already settled in prehistoric times. A well-known place and tourist attraction is Dürnstein, where King Richard the Lionheart of England was held captive by Duke Leopold V. The architectural elegance of its ancient monasteries, castles and ruins combined with the urban architecture of its towns and villages, and the cultivation of vines as an important agricultural produce of the dominant features of the valley. The Wachau was inscribed as Wachau Cultural Landscape in the UNESCO list of World Heritage Sites in recognition of its architectural and agricultural history. In December 2000, ancient history, even before the Neolithic period, brought in changes in the natural environment of the valley. Paleolithic's records of the valley have been identified in the form of figurines in Galgenberg and Willendorf, stated to be 32,000 years and 26,000 years old respectively, that testify to human occupation in the valley. It has been inferred that Krems and Melk were well-settled establishments in the early Neolithic period between 4500 BC and 1800 BC. Wachau Valley's ancient history in the Neolithic period started with deforestation by the people of the land for cultivation and settlement. In 15 BC, the Celtic kingdom of Noricum became part of the Roman Empire. Since then, the empire's boundaries were made up along the Danube, also in Wachau, and the fortifications of the limes were built along its southern banks, especially Castrum Fabianis at the downstream end of the valley and Simbergi in the area of Rossatz-Arnsdorf municipality, the remains of which can still be seen today, most notably in Bacharnsdorf. Roman rule on the southern banks of the Danube came to an end when King Odoacer ordered the evacuation of the Latin-speaking population in 488 AD. The name Wachau as such was recorded as Locus Vihora in 853 AD, and the name of Krems was recorded as Urbs Kremisa in 995 AD, marking it as the oldest Austrian town. The Babenberg Margraves with Leopold I is the first king, ruled in Wachau from 976 AD. The 11th century marked an Austrian dukedom of Babenberg under Henry I. In 1156, it came under the great knightly family of the Wachau, the Kuenrings, and later passed on to the Babenberg. With the dissipation of this line of rule, Duke Albrecht V came to power in 1430. Between 1150 and 1839 AD, the four towns of St. Michael, Wosendorf, Joching, and Weißenkirchen functioned independently. However, they formed a single entity as Wachauer-Tal Wachau in 1972. An interesting part of the 12th century history is the imprisonment of Richard the Lionheart, the King of England, at the Kuenrenscherberg Castle above the Dürnstein town for the reason that he insulted the Babenberg Duke Leopold V by showing disrespect to the Austrian flag. Even though he was traveling in Austria in disguise, he was identified in an inn in Erdberg, now a suburb of Vienna. He was finally released after paying a kingly ransom of 35,000 kilograms of silver. According to myth, the king's freedom was facilitated due to the efforts of his French aide Blondel. It is said that this silver booty was used to build Wiener Neustadt. Between 1150 and 1839, the four towns of St. Michael, Wosendorf, Joching, and Weißenkirchen functioned independently. However, they formed a single entity as Wachauer-Tal Wachau in 1972. Wachau also had its fair share of invasions. The Hungarians invaded in the 15th century, and Matthias Corvinus occupied Krems and Stein in 1477. Church reformists' activities also made an impact. between 1530 and 1620, with the Protestants finally getting subdued by the Gotteig abbot Georg II Falb in 1612–31. 11 Austrian Benedictine abbeys had lent full support in this victory. This had a profound impact on the religious culture of the valley, with many churches, chapels and other monuments being built in the valley, set in the Wachau and depicting the politics of the times. The epic German poem Nibelungenlied was written around 1200 AD. Fragments of this epic was discovered in the monastic library of Melk, which are also displayed there. However, substantial changes in the landscape were witnessed during medieval period from the 9th century with establishment of the Bavarian and Salzburg monasteries. During this process of development, economic needs necessitated creation of vine terraces to manufacture and market wine. In the 17th century, the area brought under vineyards varied widely depending on the climate and also the marketability of its wine. Viticulture on the hill slopes was practiced from the 18th century, but adjustments in acreage brought under viticulture and pasture, and viticulture and horticulture became necessary to meet the economic conditions in the region. Concurrent with this, the countryside also started developing, and this closely affected the agricultural practices in the region. History of development of towns in the valley is traced to the 11th and 12th centuries. This development, which was of a homogeneous character with wooden buildings built for housing in irregularly shaped streets, are seen even to this day. However, stone as building material was introduced in the 15th and 16th centuries to replace the old wooden structures by the peasants and the burghers. Since 1950, the residential complexes have appeared in the upper periphery of the valley. A notable feature of the valley is the layout of the wine growers' farmsteads. These are also of 11th and 12th century vintage and also credited to the 16th–17th centuries. They are basically laid in oblong a U-shape or L-shape with two parallel set of buildings. The farmsteads also have the usual gated walls, facades, service buildings and vaulted passages, which over the centuries have been modified. Baroque architecture is a dominant feature, with the street fronts depicting late medieval, post-medieval oriels on sturdy brackets, statues in niches, wall paintings and sgraffito work, or remnants of paintwork, are rich Baroque facades. The architectural features of the roof of the Wachau house comprise a sharp slope with soaring hipped roof. Modern history. From 1700 onwards, many renovation works were undertaken. These included the Melk Abbey, rebuilt in 1702, the refurbishing of the Canons Abbey in Dürnstein between 1715 and 1733, and major reconstruction works of Gotteig Abbey that began in 1719. However, in the late 18th and 19th centuries, there was a decline in its importance as a result of closure of monasteries under the secular rule of the Bavarians. However, many events changed the situation, with all local communities between Krems and Melk coming together to ensure economic development of the Wachau. Since 1904, duly integrating historical legacy with modernity, tourism and vineyards development protected by government laws are now the byword for the Golden Wachau, as it is now nicknamed. In the modern period, though, the 18th century buildings are now integrated with the town layout, and they are used for promotion of trade and crafts. The 15th and 16th centuries ambience is witnessed in the town's taverns or inns, stations for changing draft horses, boat operators and toll houses, mills, smithies, or salt storehouses. The valley and the towns still preserve a number of castles of vintage value. The Wachau was inscribed as Wachau Cultural Landscape in the UNESCO list of World World Heritage Sites in December 2000, undercategory for its riverine landscape and undercategory for the medieval landscape that depicts architectural monuments, human settlements, and the agricultural use of its land. Even prior to the UNESCO recognition on September 5, 1994, the Wachau area was officially brought under the ambit of the Natura 2000, a network of European sites of the European Union, to ensure that development in the designated areas follow all rules and regulations. The designated area has 5,000 historic monuments, though most of them are privately owned. However, the Federal Office of Historic Monuments and the Landeskonservatoriat für Niederösterreich are responsible for the conservation of the historic, cultural landscape of the Wachau. Geography. The Danube Valley in Austria, between the cities of Melk and Krems in Lower Austria, is called the Wachau. This stretch of the valley includes the hills and the adjacent Dürnstein walled and the southern walled Viertel. The Danube River flows north-northeast from Melk to Dürnstein through a meander from which it flows southeast, then east, past the city of Krems. In the Wachau, the town of Spitz lies on the Danube's western bank and the city of Melk on its eastern bank. Other important towns in the valley are Dürnstein, Weißenkirchen in der Wachau, and Emmersdorf and der Donau, which have a galaxy of old homestead buildings dating from the mid-6th century. The railway line built in 1909 between Krems and Emmersdorf is a topographical marvel. Other settlements of note in the Wachau Valley include Agsbach, Bachelmsdorf, Bergen im Dunkelsteinerwald, Firthbei Gottweig, Joching, Maria Larkham, Jauerling, Mountain and der Donau, Mühldorf, Oberamsdorf, Oberleuben, Rossatzansdorf, Rossdorf, Schwalenbach, Schaubuhel, Agsbach, and Leuben and Willendorf. The Danube River has a good network consisting of an inland navigation system. The Wachau Valley historic sites can be visited by steamer boats. The best season to visit is between May and September. Autobahn services are also available from Vienna to visit all the important places in the Wachau. The well-developed road network between Melk and Krems follows the contour of the valley. However, there are no bridges across the Danube River in this region, and ferries are the only way to cross the river. Melk is a small town on the bank of the Danube at the start of the Wachau region at an elevation of 228 meters. An ancient town with its historicity linked to the Romans and also to Babenberg's times, known then as the Namur Fort, which the residents call as the Medelka of the Nibelungenlied of the Babenberg fortress. Its present population is reported to be 5,300. Its large enticing popularity is on account of the Benedictine Abbey, perfect example of a Baroque synthesis of the arts, which forms the western gateway to the Wachau, which is located on a 200 feet high cliff. There is Baroque gateway at the entrance. The basic layout of the town below the abbey is dated to the 11th and 12th centuries. However, many of the present-day historic buildings in the main streets of the town are from 16th to 18th century. The most prominent streets laid out from the town hall square are the Hauptstrasse and Sterngasse, which is the oldest street of the town. Some notable buildings seen in these streets and the square are the former Lebzelte House, dated to 1657, now pharmacy, and the Rathaus, dated to 1575, which has a large entrance door made of wood and copper, both in the Rathausplatz square, and an over 400-year-old bakery with shingle roof. A well-conserved ancient grapevine grove is located next to the Haus am Stein behind the Sterngasse. The Danube River bank shows marks of past flood levels at the shipping master's house. Also of interest is the old post office building of 1792. established by the then postmaster Friar von Fernberg. This functions now as a convention center. Another dominant feature in the town is the Barago Barracks, built during 1910 to 13. In the peripheral area of the town, buildings built in the latter half of the 19th century and early 20th century are seen in their original condition. However, a district of villas replicating the Wiener cottage Verein can also be seen here now. A1 Autobahn between Vienna and Salzburg has a station close to the town center. Melk also has many cycle trails which are popular. Krems. Further information. Krems, which includes the town of Stein and Old Town located between Kremser and Gottweigerhof, has many historical buildings, and also pedestrian-only streets of Oberrhein and Terrilandstrasse. From historical times, Krems has been popular for wine trade due to its terraced vineyards. The Minaret church was the parish church in the Old Town, and is now used to hold art exhibitions. Apart from this Gothic church, the town also has the Farkish Street Nikolaus Church that depicts paintings on the altar and the ceiling, which are credited to the famous painter Kremser Schmidt, who lived in Linz at Tor from 1756 until his death. He was the leading painter, draftsman and etcher of the Austrian late Baroque. Ancient records of 1263 AD make mention of a payment of 10% tax by the farmers to the Bishop of Passus Sahenthu. Other monuments in Mauthaus-Auen are a Renaissance building and a Baroque palace, built in 1721, which is known as the birthplace of Ludwig von Kogel, who did research on Mozart. A medieval gate erected in 1480, known as the Steiner Tor, is another notable feature. Spitz is a small but appealing town with cobbled streets amidst vineyards, offering spectacular views of the Danube Valley. It is 17 kilometers from Krems. Occupied since Celtic times, it was first mentioned in 830. To the south of Spitz is the fortress of Hinterhaus. Dürnstein town, established in 1019 AD on a rocky promontory on the bank of the Danube River, on a gentle curve of the river, in the midst of the Wachau Valley, known then as Dürnstein. Described as the most romantic place for the picturesque ancient terraced vineyards and monuments in the Wachau, was built at an elevation of 630 feet with fortifications for the settlement and protection against floods. It is 73 kilometers upstream of Vienna. It now has a population of 936. The small walled town, located 9 kilometers upstream of Krems, is known for its picture-perfect scenic beauty. The town is also well known for some of the residential buildings on the main street. One such building is the refurbished building of HochauerW, which was originally a monastery built in 1410. It was restored in the 18th century. Chronologically, the historical legacies associated with the town are as follows. Imprisonment of the English King Richard the Lionheart in the Kuenringe Castle from December 1192 to March 1193. The conquest by the Babenberg Duke Frederick II over the rebels of the Kuenring in 1231. Building of the St. Kunigund Church in 1231. Construction of the town hall with towers and gates between 13th and 14th centuries. Recognition as a town in 1347. End of the dynastic rule of Dürnstein by the Kuenrings in 1355. The Habsburgs' acquisition of Dürnstein as sovereigns under the rule of Duke Albrecht III of Austria in 1356, establishing the monastery of the Order of St. Augustine Auchauerien and the Gothic monastery between 1410 and 1440. Emperor Frederick III awarding the municipal coat of arms to the town in 1476. Dissolution of the Order of St. Clara's nunnery and its control delegated to the Augustinian monks in 1571, the 16th-century construction of residential buildings in a unique style, which continue to be recognized for the distinct artistic value to this day, building of a new castle in 1630, construction of the Baroque monastery between 1710 and 1740, construction of the wine cellar castle at the Kellerschlossel in 1714, dissolution of the Augustinian monastery by Emperor Joseph II in 1788, battling the French invasion November 11, 1805, Napoleonic Wars known as the Battle of Dürnstein, fought in the floodplains between the river and the mountains in the river section, which is curved in the shape of a crescent between Dürnstein and nearby Krems and Dürnau. The first city mayor's election in 1850, inauguration of the railway line along the Danube in 1909, refurbishing of the Baroque tower of the monastery and painting it in its original blue color. The villages of Oberleuben and Leuben and Rothenhof, located to the east of Dürnstein on the road to Krems, are now under the jurisdiction of the town. Dürnstein is also famous for the bread known as HochauerW, which is served in wine bars. It is round-baked bread called Gebäck, which is made from the flour of rye and wheat. The recipe for the bread is credited to the Schmidl family of Dürnstein, and is a closely guarded secret. The wine-producing village is the Weißenkirchen, 6 kilometers from Dürnstein. It is a charming village with narrow cobbled streets, where the 16th-century Tiesenhoferhof with arcaded courtyards are an attraction. It has a wine press from the 18th century and also a museum known as the Wachau Museum. 19th-century paintings of the Wachau's picturesque landscape, etchings known as beach annalism, and self-portraits and family pictures, all done by Krems Schmidt, are displayed in the museum. Other towns. Other important places in the valley are Willendorf, 21 kilometers from Krems, is the place where the primitive naked statue called the Venus of Willendorf, made in chalkstone, 11 centimeters long, was discovered in 1908. One of the preeminent examples of prehistoric art, it is widely considered to be a fertility goddess. The statue is estimated to be 25,000 years old and is now on display at the Natural History Museum in Vienna. A replica is seen in the museum in Willendorf. A postage stamp of euro value 3.75 of the Venus von Willendorf was released on August 7, 2008 to mark the 100-year celebrations since the discovery of the Venus. Artstetten-Pobring. Artstetten-Pobring is a small town in the Melk district, most known for Artstetten Castle, which is noted for its many onion-shaped domes. The castle has been refurbished many times over the past 700 years. It is famous for the fact that the Archduke Franz Ferdinand was the former owner of the castle. A museum in the castle has pictures of the life history of the one and only Duke and his wife during the stay in the castle. The Duke and his wife were assassinated during the visit to Sarajevo, which triggered World War I. The castle also houses the tomb. Geology. The river valley's geological formation is mainly of crystalline rocks, interspersed with tertiary and quaternary deposits in the wider reaches of the valley, and also in the Spitzergraben. The land formation in the valley is dictated by the clay and silt deposits around Weißenkirchen and at the beginning of the Wachau stretch. A major tributary, which joins the Danube in Wachau on its left bank, is the Spitzergraben, which is stated to be part of the primeval Danube. During the Tertiary period, the flow of this river was to the west of the Wachau, on its northern border. The course of the river seen now is from Spitz onwards. The river is flowing along a weak fault zone on the southern border of the Bohemian Massif. Wine. The origin of the wine-growing tradition in Austria, and in particular in the Wachau Valley, and its popularity beyond its borders, is attributed to medieval period of the Roman settlements. The vineyard Wachau Nobilis District State Ter Leopold V von Kuenring. Wine production peaked under the Carolingians. Krems has a long history as the hub of the Wachau wine trade, while the town of Dürnstein is also known for being one of the Wachau wine centers. Founded in 1983, the vineyard Wachau is an association of vintners who created categories for Wachau wine classification. The vintners of the vineyard Wachau claim to produce quality wine under a manifesto of 6 vineyard Wachau wine-making laws, also known as 6 Wachau commandments. The products, known for their purity, are labeled under the categories of Steinfeder, Federspiel, Smaragd. The Wachau Valley is well known for its production of apricots and grapes, both of which are used to produce specialty liquors and wines. The wine district's rolling vineyards produce complex white wines. Wachau is a source of Austria's most prized dry Rieslings and Gruner Veltliners, some of the best from the steep stony slopes next to the Danube on which the vines are planted. The temperature variation in the valley between day and cold nights has a significant role to play in the process of ripening of the grapes. The heat retained in the water and the stony slopes with thin soil cover facilitates this process of growing fine variety of grapes, which results in the sophisticated wines produced in the valley. Since rainfall is not adequate for the growth of wines on thin soils, irrigation is an essential requirement to give water supply to the vineyards.